You are watching the World 24/7 on the NDTV network. I'm Parmeshwar Bawa. Let's begin with the top stories you need to know. Well, the Ministry of External Affairs issued a sharp rebuttal after a top US official criticized the recent meeting between Narendra Modi and Vladimir Putin. India, in a stern reply to US regarding Prime Minister Modi's visit to Russia earlier this month, said that all countries have a freedom of choice in a multipolar world regarding foreign relations. The death toll has risen to over 39,000 in Gaza, while 90,000 people have been injured as per the latest toll. US Vice President Kamala Harris pressured Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to help reach a Gaza ceasefire deal that would ease the suffering of Palestinian civilians, striking a tougher tone than President Joe Biden. The US stock market tumbled, dragged by a sell-off in mega-cap technology stocks after disappointing earnings from Google parent Alphabet and electric vehicle maker Tesla. For the second time this month, External Affairs Minister S Jaishankar met his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi, with the two leaders highlighting the need to resolve the four-year-old military standoff at the line of actual control with purpose and urgency. And the Olympics kicks off in Paris. A 117-member strong Indian contingent is at the Games, with the hopes of bettering the previous edition's tally of 7. Well, our big focus, the Ministry of External Affairs issued a sharp rebuttal after a top US official criticized the recent meeting between Narendra Modi and Vladimir Putin. India, in a stern reply to the US regarding Prime Minister Modi's visit to Russia earlier this month, said that all countries have a freedom of choice in a multipolar world regarding foreign relations. In fact, External Affairs Ministry spokesperson Ranveer Jaiswal was asked about the comment by a US official, and he said that India has had a long relationship with Russia, which is based upon the mutual interest. The MEA on the 25th of July actually reacted sharply to a comment by US Assistant Secretary of State for South and Central Asia, Donald Lu, on Prime Minister Modi visiting Moscow. Mr. Lu told the US Congress on Tuesday that America was disappointed by symbolism and timing of Prime Minister Modi's visit to Russia. Here's what the MEA has said.
You must understand that India has long-standing relationship with Russia that is based on mutuality of interests. In a multipolar world, all countries have the freedom of choice. It is essential for everybody to be mindful of and appreciate such realities.
In other crucial news, Palestinian health authorities say Israel's ground and air campaign in Gaza has killed more than 39,000 people, mostly civilians, and driven most of the enclave's 2.3 million people from their homes. But US Vice President Kamala Harris has pressured Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to help reach a Gaza ceasefire deal that would ease the suffering of Palestinian civilians, striking a tougher tone than Joe Biden.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's fourth address to the U.S. Congress was delivered in Washington, but his words were heard loud and clear back home in Israel. In his nearly hour-long address, Netanyahu aimed at portraying himself as a skilled statesman at a crucial time in his political survival.
Israel will fight until we destroy Hamas's military capabilities, end its rule in Gaza, and bring all our hostages home. That's what total victory means, and we will settle for nothing less.
Instead, the Israeli Prime Minister failed to mention any progress of a ceasefire deal that could free the 110 hostages still held by Hamas in Gaza, ultimately leaving many Israeli citizens who were hoping to see signs of progress towards a hostage deal disappointed.
Benjamin Netanyahu spoke for 54 minutes, and he did not mention once the need to seal the deal and to sign the deal now. That's what he needs to do. Sign the deal and release all the hostages now.
As the Israel-Gaza war treads closer to its 300th day of combat, over 39,000 have been killed and more than 90,000 have been wounded in Gaza. Israel's renewed mission in Khan Yunis has further forced 150,000 to flee what was once a humanitarian zone. But with no ceasefire or hostage deal in sight, thousands protest weekly in Israel, calling on Netanyahu to resign.
I expect the government to resign, all of them, and to take, because they are in charge of what was happening in the 7th of October, and much more. And I accept that we'll have a new election, and a new government will come out of this election, hopefully. But the main thing now is to release the hostages. There's nothing more than that.
With faltering support and extensive pressure on Netanyahu to settle a ceasefire deal, all eyes are on the Israeli Prime Minister to secure the release of the Israeli hostages and put an end to the nearly 10-month-long war on Gaza. Samia Afsar for NDTV World.
Well, US President Joe Biden has held talks at the White House with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, a day after thousands protested against the Israeli leader's visit to the US. This is amid the Gaza war. The meeting at the White House came a day after Netanyahu gave a fiery speech to Congress as thousands of pro-Palestinian protesters demonstrated outside. But US Vice President Kamala Harris later met Netanyahu and said she had voiced serious concerns over casualties in Gaza. Netanyahu does face pressure both at home and abroad to bring an end to the Israel-Gaza war, now in its 9th month.
Thank you.
Well, let's turn our attention now to the stock markets in Europe and Asia. They took a tumble on Thursday as jitters over the future artificial intelligence-driven growth of major tech companies sparked a global sell-off. The rout actually began in the US overnight, where the tech-focused Nasdaq fell 3.6% on Wednesday, marking its biggest single-day decline since 2022. About $1 trillion was knocked off the value of the Nasdaq 100, which covers the most valuable firms on the index. But the main losers were AI-related companies, including Nvidia, Tesla, and the Google owner Alphabet, whose shares have soared in recent months. Investors have poured money into the sector to ensure they did not miss out on a potential tech boom in AI, but the fall has raised concerns about whether excitement over major tech stocks, known as the Magnificent Seven, has been overblown. Well, for further clarity, we have with us Senior Finance Professional and Business Economist Sanchita Mukherjee. Thank you so much, Sanchita, for joining us on the World 24/7. The stock market losses have later spread to Asia, and tech-related firms have continued their decline. But Sanchita, help us decode what happened. What spooked the markets?
Thank you so much for having me here. There are 4 factors that are responsible for this. One would be investors asking about the ROI, that what is the return on investment that the big tech companies have actually done in this sector. They have spent a disproportionately a large amount of money on AI research, acquisition of AI companies, and all that sort. So whilst most investors understand that these the overarching results of this would take a while for it to materialize, what is happening is the near term, the earnings miss that is happening in the earnings numbers that are coming out is causing a lot of disappointment in the short-term earnings beat, right? So there is a question that when are we going to realize actually the revenue from all of these investments in the short term?
Right.
And this is actually making the options traders very, very jittery because they're having to pay a premium. The options volatility is highest since mid-March. So that's point number 1. Point number 2 is what we understand that there is a sector rotation happening from big tech sector to small cap companies in expectations of a rate cut. A lot of small cap companies will actually benefit if the Federal Reserve does go for a rate cut in the near term. So a lot of focus is happening away from big tech now towards short, small cap companies. The third point is a lot of scrutiny by antitrust regulators in US and Europe on especially on this acquisition frenzy which is happening over AI research, because while they understand, the regulators, that new technologies give rise to new markets, new lifestyle habits and new technologies, they're a little concerned that it should not establish or disrupt innovation and actually disrupt market access and uncompetitive practices. Because a lot of times what happens is when big tech jumps in to acquire, then they might be in a big hurry to commercialize and roll out the processes, which actually might jeopardize innovation in the long run. So a couple of these factors have actually contributed.
Well, specifically, Sanchita, investors also appear to be listening to growing chatter in some Wall Street circles that the AI rally that fueled a bubble that added about $9 trillion in value to the S&P 500 in the past year is bound to burst. But thank you so much for joining us on the World 24/7. Well, for the second time, meanwhile, this month, External Affairs Minister S Jaishankar met his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi, with the two leaders highlighting the need to resolve the 4-year-old military standoff at the line of actual control with purpose and urgency. The meeting was among the first few bilateral meetings the External Affairs Minister had after landing in Laos for a number of ASEAN-related meetings that are going to be taking place till the 27th of July, and comes 3 weeks after the two ministers held talks on the sidelines of the SCO summit in Kazakhstan, in a signal that New Delhi and Beijing are fast-tracking their efforts to resolve the LAC issue. Well, as always, news and updates continue in a moment right after this very short break. Welcome back. Almost 2/3 of British jobs could be enhanced with artificial intelligence, Google has claimed, with only a tiny proportion at risk of being phased out entirely. Now, instead of worrying about job losses caused by AI, the focus needed to be on making sure the millions of Britons who could work in smarter and faster ways with AI tech got the support to use it. This is what the company has said. According to research from the think tank Public First, commissioned by Google, 61% of British jobs will be radically transformed by artificial intelligence, with just 31% insulated from the technology, defined as having fewer than a quarter of their workplace tasks with the potential to be automated. Now, those insulated jobs would overwhelmingly be in either social care, transport, accommodation and food services, where complex and varied physical tasks were achievable only by human workers, Public First has said. Now, just a handful of jobs were likely to be fully phased out by the introduction of artificial intelligence, the think tank estimates, because even the most affected sector, financial and insurance, is forecast to lose just 4% of jobs, with 83% enhanced instead. Meanwhile, Indian archer Dheeraj Bommadevera guided the men's team at the Olympics in Paris to the 3rd position in the recently concluded ranking round. Earlier, Ankita Bhakat seeded 11th in the women's archery series to secure the 4th spot in the team standings. Ankita and Dheeraj have also secured the 5th seed in the mixed team event of the archery series. Rika Roy is in Paris. Here's the lowdown.
It's been a good start for Team India at the Paris Olympic Games, and the start was given by the archery contingent. The men's team and the women's team, they have now reached the quarterfinals. The men's teams ended at the 3rd position and the women's team ended in the 4th position. By dint of their rankings, there will be a mixed team of Dheeraj and Ankita. Ankita is an archer from Bengal. She has pursued archery for a very long time. In fact, since the time she was a 10-year-old. Also significantly, the average score of the archers have gone north since the last Olympic Games in Tokyo, and that gives us a lot of hope that this time around that archery could indeed get us a medal, though it's still a long way to go because they have just reached the quarterfinal stage. So far as the rest of the games are concerned, it all begins on 27th. 26th is the opening ceremony on the Seine River. It'll be quite a spectacle that France has organized to put up. There will be several heads of states. The athletes will be seen on the Seine River. It is not taking place inside a stadium. It has been, the entire ceremony this time around has been taken out. 10,000 plus athletes will be a part of that opening ceremony, and for the first time it will be a gender neutral game. So far as the Indian team is concerned, there are 117 athletes, 70 men and 47 women in that team. Following the opening ceremony, the focus will shift to the shooters. There are 21 shooters in the contingent, the largest shooting contingent after China's. Pretty much till the first week of August, the focus will remain on the shooters. Though in the last few editions of the Olympic Games, shooters had misfired, but this time hopes are being pinned on a lot of them who are not just coming here for the first time but for the second time as well. So the Olympics has begun. It has gotten off to a good start for Team India, but well, whether they are going to breach that magic figure of 10 or not is something everyone is talking about.
Meanwhile, turning our attention now to a record number of Indian origin MPs from the newly elected parliament in Britain. Radhika Iyer travelled to Leicester, which has the most number of Indian origin voters, to meet one young woman at 29 who, despite the Labour wave, won as Member of Parliament on a Conservative Party ticket. Here's possibly why Indians are making waves in Britain.
I swear by Almighty God that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles, his heirs and successors according to law, so help me God.
29 years of age, a graduate in cosmetic pharma and a first-time politician. Leicester, the bustling city in England with over 50% of its population being British Indian, voted for Shivani Raja as their MP. Leicester has been a Labour bastion for nearly 4 decades, and this July things changed. Leicester is the only seat the Conservative Party gained in the 2024 general election.
I swear by Almighty God that I will be faithful.
Shivani joins a big number of Indian origin MPs that made it to the parliament, taking an oath on the Bhagavad Gita, like Rishi Sunak did when he swore in as the first Indian origin Prime Minister of Britain in 2022.
It was a truly memorable and honourable moment for me. I remember standing in line with many other MPs from really diverse backgrounds, and there was a lot of excitement, and we were all just eager to stand tall and represent the constituencies that we were elected in. So a real humbling and special moment for me that I'll treasure forever. So indeed, the country was clearly ready for a change, and I'm really grateful that Leicester was definitely ready for a change. We've had over almost 40 years of Labour administration right here in the city, and not much to show for it.
A record number of Indian origin British MPs became MP candidates, and more than 24 British Indians became MPs in the parliament. This new parliament in Britain looks very diverse, younger and inclusive. Political experts say British Indians were otherwise shy of even expressing their views publicly until recently. But now in the UK, politics, technology or business, there is representation, voice and very visible participation.
Yes, it is surprising that so many members of the British Indian diaspora have become involved in politics. In the 70s and 80s, 60s, 70s and 80s, when they started to come over in greater numbers, they absolutely kept their head down and away from politics and focused on business and development within their families. But into the third generation of British Hindus, it's very interesting that they have integrated a lot more. In Oxford, we find that they're coming up now studying humanities subjects. They're studying theology and religion and philosophy to do with their own tradition in a way that they didn't in previous generations. They focused on pharmacy and medicine and engineering and computer science and things that essentially consolidated them as the wealthiest and best educated diaspora group in the UK, but they weren't as involved with the humanities, they weren't as involved with government, with the police, etc. Now they are.
The buzzword this election has been "It's time for change," and it did come. with a bigger representation reflects a rising engagement politically by British Indians, also screaming it loud and clear about their broader success in Britain. Immigration, citizenship issues and other policies surrounding matters of the Indian diaspora would be reflected more and more with more representation in the British Parliament by British Indians. Radhika Iyer in Leicester, NDTV.
Well, thank you for watching this edition of The World 24/7. We'll keep tracking the latest developments for you. Do stay tuned.